Greetings, folks. Welcome to the Smite Pro League, week number 5. I'm Tom Battinger. That's Taco over there. And today we've got a pretty full schedule. We're going to have the Pro League every Thursday and Friday, obviously. But we've got 2 matches today and 2 matches tomorrow. A full week of action here. We're going to start it off hot with Dig versus Pittsburgh Knights.
I know a lot of people have been anticipating this matchup between Dignitas and Pittsburgh Knights. Arguably, 2 of the teams right now that I think, as far as public perception is concerned, might as well be first and second.
Yeah, you've got a lot of talent on both of these squads. Trifecta and United a little bit later. And then Splice, of course, the defending world champs, will play on Friday. So a very interesting sort of talk as far as how strong these teams are. You were just mentioning how, it just might as well be the top teams. But, we'll take a look at the standings and see where all these teams lie in just a minute. And really what it comes down to is Dignitas is on top. Pittsburgh Knights, though, they've got that one loss, which separates them from that second spot.
And United currently holding that second place in the standings for now, but that isn't necessarily going to be the case as things continue to develop throughout the Pro League. I mean, just so much competitiveness, I think, between rival SK, Pittsburgh Knights. I mean, no one's safe, really.
Yeah, I'm looking at this number 5 spot as a really interesting position. SK Gaming and Team Rival are all just as strong, I think, as 2 and 3 right there. And Renegades yet to play. They're certainly a wild card with their roster as well. So a lot of things on the table. But Dignitas and Pittsburgh Knights. Dignitas looking to stay undefeated here today. And the Knights trying to get to that number 2 spot.
I think for the Knights, though, this is going to be one of the more telling matchups for sure, because Dignitas has definitely come into Season 6 relatively hot. It just feels as though no one's really come up with too many effective strategies. I know that there's been a couple of sets where things have gone incredibly close for Dig, but in the end, they've ultimately prevailed, and I think that that's just largely credited to the fact that Qvofred has been insane so far.
Yeah, Qvofred, and it's interesting. Qvo has been insane for a while, and I really all put it back to when he finished school. As soon as he was able to focus 100% on the game, he really became this transcendent talent above what he already was, which is established as one of the game's top players. After that moment a year or 2 ago, he really stepped his game up, and people started comparing him to adapting. Could we call this guy the best player in the world? That was a conversation we had around this time last year, and I think we could still certainly try having it again.
Something else, too, is just how well Hurriwind actually has managed to blend into this squad. I think that there was a lot of question marks surrounding Dignitas' choice of a mid laner, particularly because Hurriwind, as an individual, never really came out as someone that was going to make his own 1v1 type of outplay. But as far as the team fight is concerned, Hurriwind has definitely been the follow-up that Dignitas has needed, and it just seems as though his play style has definitely had no problems whatsoever lining up with the rest of Dig.
Very similar situation in Qvo as well. As soon as he's able to dedicate all of his time to Smite, certainly became a more open-minded player, and I think that open-mindedness allows him to gel with this Dig squad. Talking about different regions, right? Largely European. Don't forget, these teams are living together over here now down here, and so that's an adaptation that the squad has been kind of talking about and enjoying. And as far as talking about their opposition, the Pittsburgh Knights, Dignitas had this to say, Taco. When I was talking to Ataraxia, he mentioned, one of the things is that we know how the Knights are going to play. They might do it better than most, but we know kind of what's coming out of them. What do you have to say about that? Do you think that's an accurate mark?
I think that's a very accurate point to be made for Dignitas, because Zyrhoes is right. I think that as far as Pittsburgh Knights are concerned, it's not necessarily that they're going to bring out anything that's some kind of meta breaker or something never before seen. It's just that they tend to play the fights just so much better than everybody else that it can feel really devastating when you're trying to actually find an outflank opportunity. And I think that'll be a big thing for Dignitas to really keep an eye out for. It's probably going to come down to Qvofred as well, trying to just hunt out adapting, because we've seen a lot of patience from adapting so far this season. I think he's done an excellent job at just finding his moments to really penetrate the back line.
That's been a really important point is the jungle, but also I'm looking towards that carry lane. The long side has been really important. Watching what Arkle has been able to do. Barracuda basically won the game for his team in the late game last weekend. So I'm looking at Ataraxia and I'm looking at Vote. These guys here, very interesting hunters and approaches. Ataraxia has been playing with some build, et cetera, et cetera. So we've seen a lot of Xbalanque banned, usually. But we've seen some Jingwei and some very Hachiman style picks. Are you expecting anything oddball coming out of that lane today?
No, I think that I would like to see maybe the introduction of gods like Kumbhakarna, though. I mean, Pittsburgh Knights and Dignitas both have kind of shown a slight tendency towards compositions favoring auto attack speed based characters. So like the Kalis, Bakasura, Mercury, I expect those to be some kind of heavily contested picks today.
Yeah, and with the removal of Odin's anti-attack speed, really all you have is the Kumbhakarna on the yacht, and then Vamana a little
Chuck.
bit here and there, and of course Chalk Money, baby, who I was very upset to hear lost the tier 5 vote. I definitely had voted for Chalk. I'm just putting that out there.
What can you do? It's all down to Baron and Amir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's your vote on?
I had to put Baron, man. I mean, Amir's a cool guy, don't get me wrong, but he has like 20 skins.
I don't care. It should have been Chalk anyway. Chance of Chalk ADC?
Slim to none. In fact,
It is Nate. It is Ataraxia.
I especially do not think that Ataraxia would want to play Chalk ADC.
Well, you know what? We have him standing by. I have no idea if they're going to be able to ask this, but I wonder if he'll play Chalk mid.
Thank you, guys. I'm here with Nate, Joshua, Mark, Hunter for Team Dignitas. I got to ask you right off the bat. You guys are currently 3-0. What's your current prep normally like? And are there any changes that you have to do against a team like PK for prep-wise?
We're mostly just keeping it the same. I think since moving into the team house, this will be our second set in the team house. Practice has been a lot better. Any issues that arise, we can kind of just talk through and sit down. And we're just more efficient in general, I think. But for PK specifically, we've not really changed anything. Obviously, we have better insight into these players because we've played against them for so long, especially these guys into Zyrhoes. So we've got some tricks up our sleeves for that. But outside of that, nothing special.
Specifically up against Vote, how has that matchup been historically for you versus him?
I think me and Vote have defined ourselves as some of the best team fighting ADCs in Smite, especially in Europe. So I think it'll be whoever has the biggest impact in team fights. That's usually how we play things out. Sometimes we do stuff in lanes, but mostly I think our names and our score lines come from team fights. So it's pretty much going to be who can team fight better, I think.
So if Dignitas wins today, it's because of X. What is that X?
It will be because of Harry, whether he trolls or not, whether he does what he does in scrims, where he says, I would definitely do this in a real match as he's diving the fountain when a tier 2 still up. So that's Harry, really.
I ask everyone this question. I got to ask you as well. What's your predictions for the set?
I think it's going to be a good set. I don't know who's going to win, but it's going to be fun. So.
Well, tough set up against PK today. Thank you again, Nate, Joshua, Mark, Hunter for Team Dignitas. Back to you at the desk.
And you know, they asked Nate beforehand if he was planning on playing Chalk, and he said, maybe not today, but it is in the arsenal.
I have a feeling that one might have been skipped over, but, it's okay. One thing I definitely loved Ataraxia mentioning, though, was the emphasis on the team fights between both Pittsburgh Knights and Dignitas. I think that he hit the nail right on the head when it comes to himself and Vote. Both of these hunters, I think, are really well established in terms of their team fighting prowess, and I think that positioning obviously going to be a crucial aspect to keep in mind here, but I also really want to keep an eye on maybe some early ganks also trying to develop into the dual lane. We have seen, I think, more of a tendency between Qvofred and adapting for them to kind of lurk that solo side of the map, but I definitely think that this might be the first time in a while that both of these teams start paying a little bit more mind towards duo.
Well, it certainly might be something that Dignitas pulls out to really topple what PK has brought. But Pittsburgh Knights here in that third position trying to wrestle things under control. We mentioned that they kind of have one general approach to the game, and it's team fight oriented, somewhat late game. So it's going to be interesting. I think a big part of what Knights do has a lot to do with a little bit of EmilZy, but I'm really focused on the mid lane, honestly, coming out of here.
The mid lane for Pittsburgh Knights, though, I mean, it's weird because Hurriwind, you've had a chance to see him for so long, but I am just not 100% though when it comes to the Zyrhoes matchup. I think that's going to be a stalemate between the two of them.
It's going to be tough because Zyrhoes, has just not been Zyrhoes this season. We've seen one or two games, and it just hasn't been really the flash that I'm particularly used to. I'm usually very high on the stock of Zyrhoes, and I haven't really seen that come to fruition. So it's a question of, are we waiting for the other shoe to drop, or what's up here, bud? But I'll be honest, I think that it's a matter of time before we see kind of this man return to what we're used to.
I think that this is more so Zyrhoes, not necessarily taking a step back as an individual as much as it is him trying to pay a little bit more mind towards the team as a whole throughout engagements.
Sure.
I feel like he's gone a lot more utility-based, especially with some of his more prevalent God pick choices like the Outposh, for example. I mean, that's mostly... I think a lot of mid lane has kind of revolved around who can play the area denial mages better, and Zyrhoes might be someone who's kind of just having a little bit more struggles towards that. I mean, he's somebody who's known for like Morrigan, for example, and the Thoth, and it's more of like that. I think 1v1 early lane bully type of style is what Zyrhoes was traditionally used to, but now that he's trying to switch things up a little bit here, I think that it has benefited Pittsburgh Knights for sure, because adapting has looked significantly, or not that, adapting ever looked bad, but I mean, it helps when Zyrhoes is also making you look just really good. Adapting's had a lot of multi-kill instances throughout some of the Pittsburgh Knights sets, and I'm expecting that to continue if Zyrhoes can maintain that utility power.
Should be very interesting to see where this whole kind of conversation goes as we get into it. Knights and Dignitas very evenly matched, and as far as I'm concerned, we were looking at the mid lane, we were looking at the jungle. Hunter's going to be a big deal. Before, Ataraxia said that him and Vote were the two strongest carries when it came to team fights. Very curious to see what Vote's thoughts are before the match. Let's go grab them.
Hello, and thank you again from the desk. I'm here with Liam Shanks Hunter for Pittsburgh Knights. I got to ask you, it was a difficult set up against Rival. Have you learned anything specifically from that set?
We learned that our teamwork was not as good as we thought, and Final Cage is better than Deathwalker in every way possible.
Understandable, up against the Soul Lane matchup, but a different Soul Lane matchup today. How do you think Deathwalker is going to fare?
I think in history, variety wins, so I don't know.
Interesting words yet again from Mr. Liam Shanks. I got to ask you, against your specific lane opponent, Mr. Ataraxia, how has that matchup been historically?
It's the opposite of the Deathwalker variety matchup. I always dominate.
Confident words so far. Confident words. I got to ask you, your team specifically, how has the prep been, and have you guys had to change anything up against Dignitas?
Well, last night we watched the Dig LG games, but I don't know how relevant that'll be. So we'll just see how it goes.
And now I got to ask you, because I ask everybody this, what's your predictions for this set? Is it going to be a clean 3-0 for you guys?
It'll be a close 3-2. Not going to say who's going to win.
Thank you again so much. Liam Shanks Hunter for Pittsburgh Knights. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks a lot there, Anatoly. A little bit of shots there. I don't know how relevant the LG footage will be, but we'll see how this one goes. Vote, again, just quietly confident. Kind of having some fun there, poking at a Deathwalker, but I think that he is right to feel quietly confident.
And I think it's fair between both of these teams. I mean, Ataraxia said the same exact thing in his interview. I don't know who's going to win this set. I like that Vote mentioned, that 3-2 aspect, though, because I'm always down to see 5 competitive matches between two teams I think are definitely top right now as far as SPL is concerned.
I mean, Nate's comment was, it's going to be good. And I have to agree. I think it's going to be good. Let's get right into it. P's and B's pretty pleased as we get into game number 1. Dignitas versus PK. Yellow all around. And Dignitas will have the first selection and, of course, the first ban. So we'll see where this one winds up. We've seen a lot of Shibalanke here in this first position. A lot of Arthur in that second position.
And gotta say, by the way, shout-outs to the man Zayden for the hookups with the top SPL bands now in the center of the screen.
Oh, look at that.
Love this because it's going to help you folks back out at home, too. You guys can kind of guess and check yourselves. My mentality, well, Dinger's already taken care of it. Shibalanke first to go, and King Arthur shortly after. No real surprise here. A lot of times we've been seeing that second pick team opting for the King Arthur ban right away.
Just takes it takes a lot to really bring him down, and what's interesting is that King Arthur can kind of be when it's a find the individual. I'm sorry. When it's like find the individual, like a pick composition, King Arthur is still very strong, one of the stronger characters in the game. But I think he can be dealt with. Whereas with Dignitas and PK, we want to fight. We want a team fight. We want 5-on-5s here. And I think that's really where King Arthur shines. And so taking him in a way, in general, is a good look. But specifically for this matchup, is a necessity, I think.
This is a Dignitas squad, though, that has definitely done their homework. But Pittsburgh Knights, they're not going to try and give up that early game pressure all that easily. Dwarm being under and the Achilles. Dwarm being a little bit ambiguous here as to what position that's actually going to wind up. And the same could be said for the Achilles. whether that's support, solo, jungle, that's just going to have to be decided later on. But I love the Bologna ban from Dignitas. I think that was a massive hit towards Pittsburgh Knights because Deathwalker has been insane on that Bologna.
He's been insane, particularly. She's also one of the most winningest gods in the SPL right now. Only 2 losses and I think 9 or 11 plays there. So really kind of impressive stuff coming out from the Bologna picks. Dignitas banning away and then set themselves up with a suite of basic attackers: Fafnir, Amusing Cobb, and Kronos. And can I tell you, Taco, that I really, really like the Fafnir in general with basic attackers, but particularly with AMC and Kronos. You can build both of these characters high power with respect to their abilities, right? Mage Kronos and some Transcendence Amusing Cobb, and Fafnir is going to supplement that attack speed. So I like this look a lot.
And they're both fairly interchangeable. If Zyrhoes wants to play the Amusing Cobb in mid, there's not really a whole lot to stop him, although that Circuit might be a good deterrence factor because Circuit arguably would have a significantly easier time, I think, sitting on top of that. AMC probably want the Chrono so you can have the rewind to avoid any sticky situations there in mid.
No honey?
No honey.
So not so sticky?
It wasn't even a fun.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. I see you coming over to my side.
No.
I see it. I see it. But you see how I support you when you say things like that?
I'd rather you didn't.
Oh, man. You just shut me down all the time. Terra, not going to be shutting anybody down here today. The Earth Mother will be banned out here by Pittsburgh Knights. Dignitas will follow suit by banning a mid-lane mage. Discordia has been pretty powerful in the hands of Zyrhoes, so take that away from him. I think these next 2 bans will be Zyrhoes focused because what Dignitas said, I spoke to Ataraxia with regards to Esports Weekly yesterday, and he said, look, Zyrhoes has focused a lot of his career on the Morgan, and they don't have access to that. How big is Zyrhoes' god pool? And can we punish it? So that's where Dignitas is likely to look here in the secondary ban phase.
Well, I like what the Pittsburgh Knights are doing because Dignitas have already revealed that they are looking for that attack speed composition that we were just talking about. It's had a lot of... It's mostly because of the structure control, and I think the objective burst as well. Some teams have really struggled, I think, especially against Dignitas and Pittsburgh Knights, whenever they get this Fafnir, because one team fight going awry could meet a Phoenix after the 20-minute mark, and that's what's just so insane to me because of how quickly things can kind of snowball out of control without much of a recovery factor even being involved.
I mean, AMC and Kronos are 2 of the strongest characters at really taking down a tower. Kronos can do it maybe even pre-5 minutes. Hebo coming through here in likely the middle lane role for Pittsburgh Knights. That's very aggressive. We've seen Pandacat play it and be successful there in that mid lane.
This puts a lot of pressure, though, now onto Dignitas because they're going to need some hard crowd control, and they've already solidified the Fafnir. I don't think that they can really afford to make any sort of exceptions here. That's got to be for the support position, which means that if they want some of that hard CC, then Qvofred might not be the direction that you would think initially, but I could be down for some of the dive potential out of the Qvofred. Dignitas could just look for the kill or be killed style of play.
And honestly, now that you bring that up, that's probably the good look. Just jump on the Hebo and hope that you kill him first. The Bat's one of the best characters to do that. You see Qvofred shake his head yes. Dignitas will lock in the Batman for likely his position, but no. It'll be the Jungle Monkey on Bats. Qvofred will likely find its way over to the solo lane.
A little bit of hard control being introduced thanks to that Fear No Evil, and Variety's had a pretty awesome time so far, I think, whenever he's had a chance to bring out the Qvofred. I like the idea that a Bat Out of Hell could possibly threaten the back line. Enough for Pittsburgh Knights to at least give up the initial start of the team fight. Maybe Dignitas just looking to kind of outposition Pittsburgh Knights and how chaotic a lot of those jungle fights can tend to get.
For sure.
And Humble is going to really have to be mindful of that crushing wave and the release time, because if Zyrhoes is off the mark by even the slightest bit, that team fight is going to 180.
A really big point. High execution threshold for Pittsburgh Knights here as they hover over Uller, another very meticulous or very detail-oriented character. And honestly, folks looked fantastic on it. Pittsburgh Knights talking it over here with the last of their thought process. The switch to Rom here. That is a lot less crowd control I think that's what the conversation is about. It's vote. Do you want the ROM to chase down the stragglers and the players that get out with just a little bit of HP, or do we need some more setup? I think Achilles, Jormungandr, and Serket has been proven to be enough.
ROM felt like a necessity pick, though, for Pittsburgh Knights because there is an AMC and Chronos on Dignitas. There's so much late game potential between those hunters. Pittsburgh Knights needed some way to respond to that if the match does end up going a little bit later than anticipated. ROM, Havois definitely going to be able to provide some of that counteractive burst to maybe look to control Dignitas a little bit better. At least Chronos won't have as free of a time as he's probably was hoping for.
Yeah, I got to agree there. Dignitas and Pittsburgh Knights. I'm just ready for a good fight. This could go either way. 5 games to the winner. We'll get into game number 1. Caster's waiting by. Let's check it out.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Taco. Finch and Aggro here will be the ones bringing you the call. And already, just from these picks and bans, if the matchup itself wasn't enough, we've got some pretty interesting stuff that's kind of coming out here. It feels like sort of like this control centered around the Unbots for Dignitas. But then with the Knights, it feels like they have this cleanup potential between the Yorm and the Rom if you end up getting out low.
And great dive potential as well. And that's why I'm really looking at this AMC pick in particular for Dignitas. I'd anticipate this going into the mid lane for Hurriwind here. He seems to really like this selection. And then, but you've got so much dive on the other side for Pittsburgh Knights. I mean, what does AMC do against a Jormungandr World Serpent? I just don't know how well he'll be able to stay safe in this comp.
It's not going to be easy for him, and that just shows the trust. You heard them talking earlier on, right, about how well Hurry has done kind of blending into this roster. It's a tough roster to come join, but yeah, things are different. It's Zyrhoes playing Yorm in the mid lane, so not what we expected at all.
Okay.
There you go.
This is not what I expected at all. You know, I was going to say, Havois isn't really a Zyrhoes god. And I was kind of
but Yorm is? Is that where that lands?
I just know that Havois is a known quantity in the mage category.
Sure.
And we know that Zyrhoes hasn't played it a whole lot. Yorm is a whole other story, man. This is awesome. I'm excited to see what it brings.
And I really need you to talk to me about this because Yorm, a lot of the times he can feel like he doesn't have quite enough when he's doing like frontline things for your team, but he has damage. It's certainly there.
He really does. He can put out damage pretty easily, and then the ultimate is really where it becomes pretty nuts because that is unpeelable damage. As long as you're landing those shots of the World Serpent, there's really nothing that anyone else can do about it to try and save your carries.
Well, it does mean that EmilZy will be on the Serket, Tank Serket, something we're a little bit more familiar with, and adapting in the jungle on the Havois, Deathwalker taking the Achilles to right, and it looks like a 2v2 start is what we're seeing. Variety has a little bit of help from Trixtank, and of course EmilZy over here as well, so the supports battling over the actual camps themselves, not so much the speed invades we used to see, but kind of the same idea.
EmilZy does end up getting that blue buff away, but he's in some trouble here. I mean, he just used Deathbane. Thing is, Variety's only level 1. Still enough to force out the blink from EmilZy, and that does kill some of his kill potential in the early game. But you're right. I mean, Tank Serket is one that we've seen a lot of. She has Prot Shred, True Damage, great CC. She brings a lot of the things that you'd want your support to bring. It's just that she can end up feeling pretty squishy in the early game, and that's where I think Hurriwind's AMC can really make a lot of plays happen, is with that cripple on Stinger. Once he hits level 5, he's going to get ahead and build a little bit of HP, it seems like, in what could be either a Blackthorn or a Runeforged Hammer in that first item slot right after his boots. I think that'll be a big boon for him and his survivability.
What are you thinking we're going to see as the build path here from Zyrhoes? Because look at the damage coming out to Qvofred already, just caught in the middle lane, and he'll pay a hefty price. But what are you expecting we'll see from him?
I'd expect cooldown boots, probably, or maybe he goes pen boots, but with the magic focus start, that means that he's probably going to be building into pen second, and usually you don't need to double stack your pen that early on. I'd anticipate it'll be a Spear of Desolation, though it could be a Spear of the Magus. I suppose that those ticks from your pool might end up making Spear of the Magus worth it, but I'd still think that Spear's probably your best bet. Basically, I'd anticipate 2 damage items early on, then something like a Breastplate of Valor, to try and give him some level of tankiness.
Right.
Could be a Spirit Robe or something like that, depending on how worried he is about the magical damage coming from Trix and Ataraxia, but Zyrhoes probably doesn't need to be that worried about it. I wouldn't mind Pen Boots. Yeah, I think I'd go Pen Boots, Deso, Breastplate. And then I'm sitting at 40% CDR with my Mage's Blessing. and I've got some protection, and I'm still dealing relevant damage. Those would be my first 3 most likely, but always subject to change based on if he falls behind or gets ahead.
Of course, and we don't have a ton of data on
We
how
don't-
Zyrhoes as
we
a
do
mid
not.
laner likes to build Jormungandr, so or really anyone. So
Look, I'll admit it. I've never played Jormungandr mid.
Sure.
Haven't given it a shot. I don't think a lot of people have,
No.
to be honest with you. Zyrhoes is like the last one I'd expect to do it, too. That's the thing. And it's not that Zyrhoes has always played pure traditional. I mean, he used to play Giannis in the jungle. He used to play Thanatos in mid. But still, I mean, Jormungandr mid is something that I definitely did not expect from him.
Well, this is yet more that is new. The blue buff invades from the tanks. And again, it's left these hunters on an island. That's sort of become the new thing. It feels like early Season 4, kind of,
Yes.
right? When the hunters were allowed to just chill and farm over there in dual lane. They'd rotate over super far ahead. I mean, they're the highest level right now in the game, 5-5. And it's because these tanks have left them alone for the most part. EmilZy has repeatedly pressured this blue buff for now. And that's, I think, the biggest storyline of Season 6 so far. Where do these supports go in the early game? And how are they making use of that time?
And it's really set Variety pretty far behind. He already had to back earlier than he wanted to. He had to teleport back because he was out of mana, didn't get a chance to finish his boots or his Glad Shield. So that already sets him really behind the 8-ball in this lane, because now if he wants to rush Glad Shield, that means it's going to be hard for him to walk back without any teleport, and he'll be very slow getting back to lane.
Adapting takes quite a bit of poke, which means that no more aggression come from the Knights as they fight over those left side Harpies. You mentioned how there's already a bit of a lead developing for Knights in the solo lane. The Totem of Ku reflects that. 3 of them in favor so far of Deathwalker and EmilZy. And yeah, I mean, no big surprise. If the 2v2s happen, and the Achilles Circuit feels pretty good, right?
Yes.
As a pair. So no surprise really that they would have pressure, that they'd have better confirm around these camps and be able to do a little bit more to the Totem. So this is just, I think, Dignitas having to respond to EmilZy on this tank and maybe not being as well equipped for this early game scuffles.
And that's why this Camazot's pick is really more designed to get ahead in lane and bully you out, and that's why this strategy from Knights is doing so well, because it is setting Variety a little bit behind and really crippling in what he wants to do the most, which is trade with his lane opposition. Now they're even, so he can do it more effectively. But even then, without a blue buff, he doesn't have that CDR that Deathwalker will have to be spamming those abilities more.
EmilZy's low, it's the Stinger, just like you said, causing problems for him from Hurriwind, but EmilZy goes in anyway with the Cobra's Kiss. It is enough for him to fall back, and Hurriwind does use the beads. That's actually a small win for EmilZy, I feel like, if they got the beads out of Hurry there.
Yeah, absolutely, and Hurry had to use his Stinger, as you mentioned, and he didn't get a chance to pick it up, so that's a long cooldown.
That's right.
For him on that ultimate. Can we actually look at Hurriwind and see what he's maxing? Because he missed the Swarm there, and that's what he's maxing. That would have been enough to get first blood, just ended up juking it out, did EmilZy. So quick escape on that ultimate.
And now EmilZy going back in
now
aggressively. He
he's
knows
dead.
there's no beads. Adapting right here, waiting. Crushing Wave brings him low, but not enough for the kill just yet. And now Adapting went
He's
too
alive?
far. He ends up falling. Trixtank is the one that finds first blood for Dig.
Wow, I really thought Hurry was dead to rights there without any sort of repercussion, but good peel coming from Trix. That stun actually, I think, interrupted the Water Hands coming from Adapting and ended up getting them the kill.
And I think EmilZy might have missed some damage when he came in too. Now Fear No Evil means
Wow.
a second kill on the table. It goes to Trixtank as well. The aggression from the Knights in the mid lane punished as somehow Hurry makes it out.
Great play from Trix. Not only does he end up saving his mid laner, but getting the first blood instead. Even if Hurriwind would have fallen from the last tick of last breath, he did enough to make sure that Pittsburgh Knights wouldn't have gotten the first blood bounty.
Right.
And then with an easy jump stun onto EmilZy. I was going to say that there's the 2 sets of blinks on this lineup for Pittsburgh Knights early on is pretty risky when there's a Hun Bats on the other side.
Yes.
And already Qvofred making EmilZy pay with his first ultimate of the game.
And it really does. I was talking about how important he'd have to be with these ultimates, how well timed they'd have to be, but doesn't that lower the margin for error significantly for him now without having to worry about some extra sets of beads or even just team fighting relics in general? You know, obviously EmilZy very likely not going to get beads on the support, but I get what you're saying. Blink does nothing for you when you're in that Fear No Evil situation, so it certainly makes things easier. But I mean, I love this, man. We got these 2 top-end teams playing, and we've got Yorm in the mid lane, supports doing different starts than what we normally see. I mean, it's all over the place already, and aggressive plays in mid lane getting answered. It's been everything you wanted already.
And it's only game 1, Finch.
That's right.
It's a best of 5.
We just
We
started.
could be here for hours, literally, and I would love it.
Oh, yeah.
This is, I talked about it on Esports Weekly. I talked about it in my tweet this morning. This is a huge week for Dignitas. If they can come out of this week 4-1 or even 5-0, that is going to be such a boon for them. And
Yes.
it really will solidify them as the best team in the SPL right now. They've already beaten Rival, though. In fairness to Rival, that was their first set of the year, so maybe they could get it back on a rerun. But still, Dignitas is undefeated for a reason. If they manage to best Pittsburgh Knights and Splice, I don't think you have an argument for saying that there's a better team in the SPL right now.
I don't think so either. You talked about it in your monologue, right, on Esports Weekly, a show I check out on Wednesdays if I was interested in esports having to do with Smite and stuff. You talked about how Knights weren't particularly hyped coming into this, and by us and fans and stuff, right? There wasn't a whole lot of people talking about how good this team was going to be. Almost like they were just overlooked. It's like every time you looked at the roster, you would say out loud, "Oh, they're sick." But when you were naming top teams, you would think Knights and Rival and you would kind of, and Splice obviously, and you kind of would let this one drop by the wayside. I'm not super surprised they look this good.
No, me neither. I mean, this is a team that has so much talent on it still, but a newfound creativity, I would say, and still a great coach in Biggie. I mean, they have everything you want from a top team in this league, and they've really showed it through their first 3 sets, and I anticipate, even if they don't come out 4-1 or 5-0 after this week, because remember, they do have another game against Splice tomorrow, that people will still be impressed with Dignitas no matter what, and they should be. 3-0 to start the season is nothing to shake a stick at.
Well, these mid lane builds are going to be ones to watch, as it's Talaria boots and the Shillelagh there for Hurriwind. EmilZy gets hammered out, but no more aggression. And it's cooldown boots here first for Zyrhoes, and still a little bit open on where he wants to go for this first pin item, but he is going to finish that right away, so still one worth following along with.
Yeah, that Shillelagh is going to turn into a Blackthorn Hammer here for Hurriwind. By the way, the Cudgel 1 start ends up saving his life off that last breath, because it does have a little bit of HP, and that's all he needed in order to stay up. And the Blackthorn Hammer is really great on AMC because he just has a lot of abilities that do a lot of damage naturally by way of base damage. So they end up getting value just by having extra CDR, and that's what the Mage's Blessing's there for. Blackthorn Hammer will give him the extra mana, which Transcendence usually provides, but this is a faster startup for AMC. And in the mid lane, AMC is really just all about getting mid-camp control, and that's what Dignitas has had so far this game. It hasn't really hurt Zyrhoes too much quite yet, but it has set up for Zyrhoes, Trixtank, I got there eventually, for a ton of success. I mean, Trix is up 1,000 gold right now over EmilZy.
Yes.
The first blood and the second kill helps, but those mid camps consistently going over to him have really been a big help.
EmilZy trying to come defend his own jungle as it's Dignitas who are aggressing onto the red buff. Looks like they find it. They give it over to Trixtank. He is 2-0-0.
That's right.
So maybe that's the right call. As
and no boots yet for Trixtank. He actually goes with the Gauntlet of Thebes right away, and it's probably because he just had enough to get it right away, and their game plan is so mid-centric, right? I'm sitting in mid lane all game, I'm getting mid camps all game, I'm not really rotating in the early game, I'm sedentary, and I'm getting this farm right here. That means that Trix is incredibly tanky for being early in this game. He's already done with the Gauntlet of Thebes, and he should be able to back and get his boots without any sort of worry at this point. Now he's got a huge power spike, where EmilZy's has already built his boots, and is now going into a Gauntlet of Thebes, and that's going to be much, much slower for him to get as tanky as Trixtank, not just because of the base numbers, but because Trix has already done stacking.
Yeah, if we weren't on the back end of it already, I would have been really worried, because ceding even more of a mobility advantage to EmilZy on the Circuit, I would have thought would be a big problem. He was trying his best to keep up with him, but it wasn't. So now that we're on the back end, it's really easy to be like, well, I mean, Trixtank with the Galaxy Brain plays, and now that he's got the cooldown boots finished, as you said, this is a big opportunity for them to play even more around this Fafnir, but it's Adapting who's aggressive into Variety, who gets right up into the air. It just wasn't enough to kill.
But Adapting's now in trouble as Qvofred has enough to kill. He gets Adapting with some ease. As soon as that Crushing Wave gets used, that's all your CC immunity. And a good hammer from Trixtank's there, but Qvo really did the bulk of the damage. Hunbats being back in the meta is something that, if you thought Dignitas was already pretty good, is going to boost them up that much more.
Qvofred's not done just yet. A good stun, though, shuts down Trixtank, and Deathwalker makes out of that one alive. But that's yet again aggression from the Knights that gets answered by Dignitas. It really has been Knights all this time who's been the aggressors, and they haven't been able to quite connect. I don't know if Adapting's maybe doesn't have enough damage, or if he underestimated how healthy Variety would be in that situation, but he hit his combo. It just wasn't enough.
In a Book of Thoth start for Adapting in the jungle, and
maybe that's it.
I really dislike
slow, right?
Book in the jungle. You just don't get the farm that you need
Vote's in some trouble here in the jungle as well. He's able to get away from Hurriwind's pressure, though, as the Blackthorn Hammer is now completed for him. They've got a pretty big grouping if they want to try and force something around the objective, but they're going back to farming, and to be fair to Dig, it's worked so far.
It has. It's been serving them pretty well. And right there, Hurriwind got the Aegis out from Vote. That's all you can really ask for. But yeah, the Book of Thoth in the jungle, it's just such a slow power curve. And Habwa is already a little bit more late game leading, so you kind of want to lean into that, and I understand that point of it. But you're not in lane getting 6 creeps every couple seconds. You're getting 3 creeps in a camp, and then walking around and getting another couple, and it just takes so long. And with Book of Thoth, it isn't like it used to be where you don't really need the stacks. It's really just the base numbers that you get from completing the item that are really worth it. Now, because that conversion passive gets an extra 3%, that's a huge deal in converting your power. And so adapting right now is going to feel a lot weaker than he will if he were just to have this book already complete. But that's going to take him a long time.
Man, how many hunters would kill for 13.5 minutes uninterrupted to farm over here in dual lane, right? That is the dream, and you can see it resulting in these charts. They're both 14 and way out in front. They've been under almost no duress so far this game. And really, this whole start from Pittsburgh Knights, all it's done truly is give Deathwalker a lead against Variety. Everyone else has suffered from it. And I don't know if is that enough? Deathwalker coming out a little bit ahead of Variety on Achilles. I don't know if that's enough.
I mean, it is a lot. It is definitely worth a lot, where Achilles is one of those gods right now that just feels sometimes unmanageable coming out of the solo lane.
Yeah, cue up that final clip, right?
Yeah, exactly. He just does a lot for you when rotating from ahead or even. But I agree with you. I think that Qvo's lead in the jungle is more concerning to me if I'm on Pittsburgh Knights than it would be to see Deathwalker a little bit ahead. This Camazotz can still make an impact, and just the harassment that he will provide. But also remember that it's kind of twofold, right? It isn't just that Variety's a bit behind, it's that Vote is ahead, and so that's harder for him to dive.
Gold Fury, incredibly low. It'll be Vote contesting, but Dignitas secure the objective. But now the Jormungandr's here to play. And remember, this is the mid laner Zyrhoes, diving in but diving back out. They can't find much, and a very clean disengage from Dignitas on the back of the objective.
So the Divine Ruin was the call for Zyrhoes, and that's really, again, looking forward to when Variety's going to be joining these team fights and how much sustain he will likely have. And look at all the hammers for Dignitas. They've got 3 Blackthorn hammers now between Qvofred, Variety, and Hurriwind. Cheap HP, power, CDR.
It's a good item.
It does a lot for you, and this is not unexpected in my mind. Still very, very good. Is receiving a nerf in the future patch, going down to 350 health, I believe. So this might not be this might be the only time we see 3 Blackthorn hammers as teams are catching on to it, but when it's still at 450 health for such a cheap gold price, I mean, right around 2K, you take that where you can get it. And now Hurry's building into what's probably going to be a Crusher, get himself some pen, great synergy with the passive and the rest of his abilities. And then he can, from here, I think Runeforged might be the call. It's more HP, and it's great on AMC because you just lay down the honey, and everything you're doing is now more damage. If they're crippled, that'll count for you. And if they're slowed by Variety, if they're slowed by Trixtank, if they're feared by Fear No Evil from Qvofred, Hurry's going to be doing that much more damage to them.
This is a great build path from Hurriwind on the Samuzan Cobb, and really just a great start. I do want to make sure, though, that as much as I think this has all been in favor of Dig, it's not as if they've blown Pittsburgh Knights away or anything like that. It's only about 2,000 gold, and I think around 3,000 last time I looked at the chart, 3,300. It's certainly not nothing.
No.
And this squad from Pittsburgh Knights was trying to be aggressive early, and that failed, so it was a big answer from Dig. But I don't think that this is out of reach for the Knights.
No, and I think, honestly, the fact that Adapting gets away with only 2 deaths with not going Purification Beads the first 12 levels is a win in a lot of ways for Pittsburgh Knights. This Pittsburgh Knights team, we're starting to see, now that we've seen all these teams compete a little bit, I think that we're getting a better feel for what these teams' identities are going to be throughout Season 6. For example, I think SK is going to be a very aggressive team in the early game, and that's what they're going to hang their hat on.
Neil is all over the place.
Exactly. In the early game especially. And it's not that that's the only way they can win, but that's just their most comfortable play style, their default, if you will. I think Pittsburgh Knights' default is a late-game team fighting team. That's where this team seems to want to take their games, is to the later stages. And so getting Adapting on this Habwa pick and on a very, very slow build where he still has no penetration in this build quite yet, this is Pittsburgh Knights playing for the long game. And so the 3-0, 2,000 gold, 3,000 experience, it's not a big deal to them. They're expecting this game to go 40 minutes, and that's where they're expecting to win.
And if you're Dignitas, I feel like you're also okay with that. You're the one with Fafnir into AMC Chronos for your late game. And Fear No Evil never stops being good, by the way. So, I mean, it's a really good competition for them. We saw how quickly they were able to burn the Gold Fury in that last fight. Vote barely got up in the air to contest. And look at this poor Pyromancer. I don't know what it did, but it never stood a chance. It's down. Dignitas claimed that one, too. So they certainly have plenty to lean on in the late game as well.
And I like that Dignitas is, despite not having a huge advantage, is at least leveraging it a little bit, getting small wins across the map. It's not a whole lot of buff invades. It's a quick Gold Fury whenever you're feigning a buff invade. It's, we outcleared in solo. Let's see if we can burn Pyromancer in 4 seconds. Hey, look, it's dead because we have Chronos, who's gotten to level 18, literally uncontested whatsoever. And, of course, we've got a Fafnir. So we can do any objective we want pretty quickly at this stage.
Well, looking at these builds, still not what I would have been expecting from anyone here on the side of Knights. It's Book of the Dead third here for adapting, which worked very well with the Book of Thoth. It gives them a little bit more survivability. And then Soul Reaver for Zyrhoes as well. We were expecting this to be somewhere in the middle, like kind of a hybrid type build, but looks like my man just wants some damage.
Well, I like the Soul Reaver here a lot, honestly, because I already pointed out how many Blackthorn Hammers are on the enemy team.
This
is all about taking away percentage of your health based on your max HP, and so all these players have a lot of max HP.
Well, Trixtank's in some trouble, forced into Draconic Corruption, which gives him an extra escape. And that's really all it took. The Knights immediately disengage off the back of forcing out this ultimate. And that is a big ultimate to force, especially with the next Fury spawning in. Maybe the Knights now have a chance to play around it.
Just realized that EmilZy has Thorns as his second relic instead of the Shell. I just don't know that he's going to be able to be tanky enough to make someone care about this Thorns. That's the big thing for me. Is that Thorns, you want to be able to make them respect you, and that, well, if I'm going to get if I can kill him in 3 autos, I'll just kill him in 3 autos and take the damage. It's not a big deal. That is a bit concerning to me, and I think an upgraded Shell would have gone a long way against a double auto attack composition.
Well, that force of the ultimate does mean the Knights will be the ones forcing this Oni Fury. Trixtank right here, but they know there's no Draconic Corruption. They leash the objective, and they make Trixtank the target already low, and EmilZy's the one that finds credit, but Zero's not done yet. He's up inside the ultimate looking for a target, but comes back towards the rest of the Knights.
Now, a little bit of an overextension there from Trixtank, but he did get beads away from adapting. That's forcing adapting to play really far back now because Qvo still has Blink Fear No Evil ready to go.
And that's the next big ultimate that they're concerned about is Zyrhoes realizes he can't quite take the duel up against Variety on this Camazotz. And I think even though it cost them Dignitas' support, at this point, I don't think the Knights can do it. So that's still a 1 defense for them.
That's right. That's exactly what Trixtank is going for. And Variety did a good job of forcing Zyrhoes away once his ultimate was on cooldown. And this is the other benefit of pushing it late, even though you had a lead, is that now Variety is caught up and is able to do exactly what you need him to do out of the solo lane.
Well, it is Dignitas with control around the objective. They want to come back towards Oni, but Variety happy to poke from this range, so he's more than happy to stay here. Now the rest of the squad heads over to the actual Fury pit. Vote nearby, though, so we can still defend at least somewhat, but the objective dropped.
This is great work from Variety to just keep everyone occupied in the mid lane, and his poke is very relevant still up against adapting. He's got enough protection by way of that Genji's guard for him because there's no pen for adapting. Variety doesn't have to really respect adapting's damage too much because he just doesn't have enough to chew through that magical protection that Genji's is providing.
Well, Trixtank trying to keep EmilZy in combat while the rest of the team pulls the Oni Fury. EmilZy can blink in if he likes to. They've got 3 of them on the side of the Knight, so it won't be too hard to engage. But Dignitas haven't hard committed to the objective just yet. Zyrhoes now has the dash taken as well, and the beads, so he could certainly be a target. Variety has to jump out, and there's the ultimate backup. Ataraxia now must avoid the giant World Serpent, but it's an easier said than done task.
But he gets to go lifesteal off this red buff if he wants, but no, the engage is coming. A great Fear No Evil onto Zyrhoes, and that'll burst him down. Variety gets the kill.
You don't see Jormungandrs die that quick all the time, but in the mid lane squishy, there's not much they can do. Adapting finds one, but an answer back from Qvo onto Deathwalker on the right-hand side makes it 2 for 1 in favor of Dig, and they're absolutely not done. Vote goes up into the air, but that's more for safety than for the damage. He's in trouble as soon as he lands, rolls right into Hurriwind, who finds the kill.
EmilZy uses last breath, but it's really just a last-ditch effort because everyone from Dignitas is still plenty healthy. Good job by adapting to really burst down Ataraxia. Never got a chance to use any of his relics or his ultimate. but still that's a 3-for-1 and an Oni Fury for Dignitas, and this is where Oni Fury can really show off if Dignitas are healthy enough, but I just don't think they are to walk right over to Fire Giant and force a fight onto Pittsburgh Knights. If Ataraxia stays alive, then I think that's the right call, where you really force Pittsburgh Knights to group up, come to us on the right side of the map, and let our Oni minions do the work. But a quick back from Qvofred, Hurriwind, and Trixtank also right there, and now you just want to push and force a fight now as soon as you can on this Pyromancer and make that left side Oni wave that were just pinged out by either Pittsburgh Knights or Dignitas. Those are the enhanced waves. You want to let them do the work for you because they will get towers with ease.
Yes, they'll absolutely be able to burn them down, but what a big fight from Dig. I mean, we talked about how important Qvo's ultimate is going to be in these engagements, and he hit a perfect one. I also want to know about your timing on the ultimate from Zyrhoes. It felt maybe a little bit too early. As soon as that was down, he was a bit of a sitting duck for Dignitas as well, and Ataraxia being level 20 at this point, I mean, I don't know what you do.
I mean, they didn't have to worry about the Chronos at all that fight, and they still ended up losing it pretty handily. In my mind, it was all tricks. I mean, he got beads from adapting. That forces him to play really back. He gets beads away from Zyrhoes and forces that ultimate. That forces him to play back. And now adapting, by the way, has gone for a Soul Reaver and again has 0 pen in this build. This means that he can only hit Ataraxia or Hurriwind. Or Qvofred, I suppose, who doesn't have a lot of magical defense. Variety and Trixtank are not worth his time at this point. It's not even worth using your buttons on him.
Yeah, I just don't even know who's meant to be the one frontlining for this team, as Trix considers holding the objective but leashes it, adapting, forced to run along with Zyrhoes on left-hand side, and Vote will force down these towers as long as the objective doesn't actually go down, so good use of time. But Trixtank and Draconic Corruption, that feels like a commit to me. The AoE course coming out, but immediately Zyrhoes goes into the ultimate. This is pretty good disruption to try and force them off the objective, and it must be leash. But what about the fight on the back end?
Ataraxia finds himself in a perfect position to take down
so
Zyrhoes, but
damage.
a good knock-up, good Fear to Weevil as well, adapting, trying to chase down Ataraxia, but Rewind still good. Now the chase is on, onto adapting, but Vote is still pushing on this left-hand side. He's got a Phoenix here.
Yeah, he's got no ultimate. Adapting has no way out. Vote, though, should keep this going. So far, this is actually very strong for Pittsburgh Knights, unless the objective itself ends up going down, and they still have EmilZy and Deathwalker around to try and contest. Trixtank low as well. This is very critical for Dig.
EmilZy right here has an ultimate available. Dignitas get the Fire Giant, but EmilZy still on the run. Deathwalker's able to combat dodge out of the way, but the chase is on for him. He's got Blink, so he should be A-okay, as long as he doesn't get put in combat, and a quick one prevents that. You're right, Pittsburgh Knights get that left side Phoenix, but what can Dignitas get on the back of this objective?
They've got to get quite a bit to make up for the most valuable Phoenix side on the map, so this is when they go to work. The tier 2 tower in mid has already crumbled, and with everyone back up except for adapting, it'll be hard for them to push right into a Phoenix right now. So they'll strip away the jungle, go back and spend some of this gold, and then come back out.
Now that may seem like Dignitas really messes up in that position, but sometimes you get dealt a bad hand.
Yes.
And that was just a really good job of playing the map by Pittsburgh Knights. Don't be surprised. Any adapting team is usually the best in the world at playing the map at any given time. But that's the right call from Dignitas. The worst thing you can do in those scenarios is get hit by decision paralysis, one person backs, and it's still not enough to save the Phoenix, and now we're not getting the objective, and Vote just got all that golden experience for free. Just take the fight on that side. He's not going to end the game. Just let him get the Phoenix, and now you have Fire Giant. You can push out those fire waves, and there shouldn't be a whole lot of pressure. But again, I love this from Pittsburgh Knights. You know that the Dignitas is going left to handle those fire waves. Let's go right and get these towers. No way anyone from Dig actually respects a tier 2 push from here. It's not worth their time.
So it will be the Knights who at least blink first. They'll be backing to be back in time to defend this left side Phoenix, and they should get there just in time, but Dignitas are going to continue the pressure and push right in.
Now the reason they have to back without getting tier 2 is because it's comp based. Normally Pittsburgh Knights would be able to stick around, get that tier 2 and back still in time to defend this, but because you have Chronos and Fafnir and AMC, you have to get back so early to respect how much damage they'll do to your objective.
Well, now we're in the actual sieging portion of the game. It's up to the Knights to play a little bit of defense. And Jormungandr can throw those puddles out from a surprising range. It's definitely decent.
Yep.
How do you feel about this defense from the Knights?
Yeah, it's not traditionally great wave clear, but you're right. Those pools will do enough to harass all of Dignitas. And now that there's actually some pen online for adapting, he's got Obsidian Shard 2. Zyrhoes is done with his Obsidian Shard and is working on probably a Sphere of Desolation. you're in a pretty good spot, but great job by Variety. He just got that Book of the Dead proc away from adapting. That's a 90-second proc.
Yeah, they've got the Habwa battling up against the Kamazots, and
great.
you can see it costing him his Crushing Wave. That's a huge win, you're right, for Dignitas. The rest of the team, though, can't quite threaten this Phoenix on the left-hand side, but Variety can sustain up all day long over here. He's got no problem sticking around this mid-wave.
And again, Variety's able to go Crusher in his last item slot because he doesn't have to respect the damage.
He's full HP.
Coming from adapting or anybody else because they just don't have enough pen to really threaten one-shotting him.
EmilZy certainly doesn't pose much of a threat to him either, as the left side Phoenix takes a bit of poke. It's the ultimate out from Zyrhoes, and this appears to just be a deterrent. They're not truly all in on this one, and he can stick around for a little bit. You can't take damage while you're in there, at least not from any news sources, so certainly Zyrhoes is okay.
Now, Hurriwind did use beads and Trixtank used shell, so not an awful loss, I would say, on that left-hand side. It looks like Deathwalker blinked in and forced that beads out from Hurriwind. But here comes the ultimate from Trixtank. They want it now.
They absolutely want to go in. Draconic Corruption has been used, and that means the AoE Chorus is there, and look how they shred the Phoenix. They only needed a few seconds, and they bring down the Firebird. For No Evil locks in Deathwalker. They don't have just enough damage, but that disengage is all they really need. Dignitas are out of there with a clean Phoenix.
And Gold Fury's up for the taking. This will let you finish all of your 6 items, most likely. Really good discipline from Dignitas. They don't pressure too much. They don't really risk their lead by any stretch because, remember, with that left side Phoenix down on their side of the map, that's a little bit harder for them to siege in because it's fire minions spawning consistently on that left side Phoenix. And if you get wiped, it's an easy end for Pittsburgh Knights. So good discipline from Dignitas. They don't risk it. They get the guaranteed objective with that Fafnir ultimate. They get the Gold Fury. Pyromancer's back up, and it looks like Fire Giant's just worn off, so they can head right back over, get Pyromancer, get Fire Giant control, and look to do it all again.
Excuse me if I got to geek out for a moment, but I just love watching great Smite, man. And that's exactly what we're looking at. It's so different when you're watching a team of this caliber where all 5 of these guys are communicating, they scrim, and they practice together all the time. It's such a clean game plan from them, and I mean from picks and bans all the way up until this execution. It is the Fire Giant, or are we defending this Phoenix? And they make that clean call. The way that they patiently re-engage on the Phoenix, and they've got Variety, and no one can answer him on the mid-Phoenix, and that buys room for them to step in and burn down the Phoenix. It really has just been so impressive what we've seen from Dig so far. I mean, just right now, they look like the top card.
They really do, and that shouldn't be any surprise with how well they've played through the first 3 sets so far this season. Variety has to use his ultimate, but Vote had to use his in response. He's going to try and get some damage out onto Hurriwind, but EmilZy already used the ultimate. He's on a Qvofred. Adapting did delete Ataraxia, and Variety's low as well.
But this might finally be the first good fight for the Knights as Deathwalker gets the execute onto Variety. Zyrhoes, there's the damage coming through, and Adapting finds himself a double kill. Sometimes he just decides to turn the games around. Hurriwind drops as well to EmilZy, and Qvofred's the only one left. Without an ultimate, the rest of the Knights go right to the FG. They're not ready to push.
Qvofred has ultimate coming up eventually, and that might be enough of a deterrent to force them off the Titan. But man, what happens there, Finch? I mean, Variety goes a little bit too far into the enemy jungle and really forces a weird fight. I don't think the Pittsburgh Knights have enough DPS without adapting here to do this Fire Giant. It's not even worth them pulling it from this position. I mean, it's going to take them a minute. Ataraxia, again, dies with both relics and his ultimate up, and he just needs to be more wary of his positioning in relation to Adapting.
He gave his life up away to kill Vote. He had to walk all the way up to hit him right when he dropped from the ultimate.
And that's not worth it because it's baiting everybody else from Dignitas into these really bad spots. But now, just now, Pittsburgh Knights are starting up this Fire Giant, and Qvofred has his ultimate available. Pittsburgh Knights can't do this enhanced Fire Giant. If they had a traditional mage, maybe they could have, but this Jormungandr, I mean, it did a lot in that fight. It disjoints the fight very well. It knocked up Variety. It really was able to chase down Hurriwind pretty well and keep him out of the fight, but overall, just not enough DPS without adapting there to end up getting that Fire Giant.
And for me, it really did come down to 2 things for me in that fight, which I think is Deathwalker's executes, which was finally able to clean up some kills that have been getting away from them low HP all game. And that Ataraxia, like you highlighted, stepped up too far forward to make sure that he killed Vote. It was Vote and Variety that started that fight off in a trade we didn't quite see, and I think Ataraxia just gets a little bit too far forward trying to clean that up.
And look, not a single carry on Dignitas used a relic that fight. Ataraxia fell, and he still has both of his available.
which means they can absolutely be here for this fight as Trixtank goes up to the Draconic Corruption. Again, that's the go button. EmilZy stunned, and he's not particularly tanky, so he gets shredded. Qvofred locks him down with the Fear No Evil. Variety in the backline forces Vote up into the ultimate as well, but Trixtank now the one isolated, and it's Zyrhoes who dunks down as Vote finds a kill of his own.
Variety does clean up adapting, though, and Variety's got a great angle onto this fight. No blink for him, but I love this pathing. Go high in lane to try and cut off the Pittsburgh Knights and force them towards that right side. But great damage from Vote may have been a little bit too much for Variety.
Yeah, I think so. That would have worked if it was the pincer, I think. But the rest of the team, maybe they saw the ward or whatever it was, but they didn't want to keep pushing into it. So I don't know how much Variety could do by himself, but it's fine. The rest of the team, with just AMC and Kronos, I mean, like, they can threaten this objective.
I don't know that they can, Finch. I mean, Enhanced Fire Giant is doing something else this season.
I guess you're right.
It is nuts how
There's
much
no
damage that
lifesteal.
provides. There's a Bancroft's Talent for Ataraxia, and that's why Hurriwind was tanking it a little bit so that Ataraxia could do more damage. Remember, Fire Giant still does hurt the damage of the person that's it's hitting, but just not enough to end up to get that objective in the end.
That hurts them. That's twice now that teams have been able to win the fight, but not been able to confirm the objective on the backside. And you're right. The Enhanced Fire Giant is nothing to scoff at. He's definitely earned the respect that's his way. Maybe some Primal Furies are on the table.
That's what I was about to say. No Primal Furies for either team, and it's been Gold Fury and Oni Fury back and forth, and it's another Oni that's about to spawn. And Oni Furies are great for pushing these objectives. By the way, the left side Phoenix that Dignitas got earlier on has already refallen. It looks like Pittsburgh Knights was not able to defend that. So that is a win for Dignitas, that even though that fight kind of gets washed, it ends up still being a slight win for them because they keep map pressure on to the Pittsburgh Knights.
Another strong fight, though, for Dig, as they're at Gold Fury, or rather the Oni Fury, but the Knights are on the FG. I don't know if they have enough potential to start threatening this, and as long as Trixtank's around, they know he's not going for it, but Qvo has potentially been isolated. His blink has to be expended defensively to get him out of there. It's much easier for the backline, the Knights, not to have to worry about being blink, fear no evil.
Yes, but he didn't need the blink last time because EmilZy was so focused on killing Qvo that he really throws his own life away in that last engagement. A great fear no evil. Not only did it push EmilZy towards the entirety of Dignitas, but it really separated the rest of Knights from ever having a chance to come in and help him. If Dignitas keeps getting fear no evils that quality, they're gonna end up winning this game.
Well, it's too high to the Urchins to talk about some builds here coming in late for Deathwalker and adapting to round their builds out, and then a Lonos, I believe, for EmilZy to round his out as well and give himself a little bit more tankiness. So they're recognizing that they need a little bit more.
I just don't like these high to the Urchins at all.
Mantle, right?
Yeah, it's got to be Mantle, but the thing is, it's probably a gold income problem where they just don't have enough to finish the Mantle. We've got enough to finish the high to the Urchin. But if at least for adapting, get a Spirit Robe. It just does more for you. I mean, it's more CDR. You don't have to worry about stacking those prots. You get a great passive. You get all these things that will really help you out. And you can ultimately, if you leave it on the Cloak of Concentration and then end up with enough gold to get Mantle of Discord, then you're in a much better spot.
Right.
At least for Deathwalker, he already has Spirit Rope, so he couldn't buy it that way. I hate this High to the Urchin late.
I get exactly where you're coming from on this one. Adapting, clearly expecting there to be a lot more skirmishes before this game truly gets settled, as the Fire Giant was being considered by Dignitas. Trixtank was the one zoning, but it wasn't enough. They end up dropping it. Remember, as long as they can keep the Knights over here, this is still good. They've got minions forcing their way down that left side lane.
Another Draconic Corruption early on. EmilZy going to jump in, but Fire Giant already down to half. Now the engagement's right onto Deathwalker. Fear no Evil, not quite as good this time, Finch.
And Zyrhoes goes in right away with his own ultimate, knocks up 2 and brings them low, but even still adapting, having to work his way into this fight. I think he was on speed when this one got started up by Dignitas, so they didn't have his damage there to help out. But it all ends up working out. The Knights forced Dignitas away for now.
Both teams probably come away with that feeling good about how that fight went. I think Pittsburgh Knights end up a little bit more positive, at least momentarily, but Trixtank, this is where that Fafnir ultimate gets so much value. He still has it going.
But he has just detransformed, doesn't get punished for it just yet, and makes his way out, but they can't commit.
Oh,
now
no!
Adapting goes in, crushing wave, hits just about everyone. Hurriwind goes down first, now Adapting forced to juke for his life. Boats up in the ultimate, can't find the shots, and Trixtank punishes the jungler for the Pittsburgh Knights. It's 1-for-1.
Man, Adapting is almost never the one that goes in first. He's always the clean-up man. He does it better than anybody in the league ever has, but he's always so patient patient. And there, he just sees an opportunity that's too good to pass up.
Yes.
He hits 3 people with his Hobwa ultimate, and again, Hurriwind dies with relics up. You've got to Aegis either the ultimate coming from adapting or the turnaround 1. That shouldn't surprise you either. He'd end up dying there, where that could have been a great fight for Dignitas if they bait adapting and he just doesn't do enough damage to kill anybody on that side. But it ends up being okay for Pittsburgh Knights because adapting trades 1 for 1 and gets a bunch of relics out from Dignitas.
Man, doesn't this sometimes feel like Blink catches your team off guard too?
Yep.
Unless you're telling us ahead of time, I'm equally surprised. And now there's distance, but all that stuff is there. It just is true for both sides. And I think that's just all it was with adapting, like you said. It was just too good of an ult to not tank, and I don't know if it was planned for the team. And it is good damage, but there's just no follow-up from everyone else. So he at least gets Hurry, but adapting falls too. And now Dignitas are right back, it feels like, in the driver's seat and pushed up.
And again, the big brain plays from Hurry by not using relics to save his life
Means
he's got him now. Saving him for next fight.
Right.
That's a classic.
Everyone knows it slightly lowers that cooldown the next time you use them. Every time that it carries over, you know, like
Right.
it's like the carry the one type scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes
Basically.
you got to save it for next game.
Right.
You know,
It's
you
for
gotta-
next game, yes.
Right, you got to have it. In this instance, maybe not next game, but next fight certainly was Hurriwind's plan.
Well, Variety isolated a bit, and this is all free damage from adapting. He's right to come up and take it, but this might be too much. It was more than poke. He full-on commits. Suddenly, adapting's gotten antsy in these last few engagements, and he's forced to disengage. Trixtank's still the front line for the team. They've got Deathwalker isolated,
Too late.
but a great ultimate coming out from him gets him away from the Fear No Evil.
Man, Qvo just rare hesitation from Qvofred ends up costing Dignitas. I think that could have been a kill on the Deathwalker if he just keeps that CC chain going. The Trixtank had set up for him. Instead, they blow an ultimate onto a character who has teleport up.
Trixtank jumps in onto EmilZy, but Variety's the one on the flank. He blinks right in onto Vote, who has to roll away immediately. But Deathwalker comes back, stuns out Variety, and buys some time, so the rest of the team escapes. And remember this, Adapting's on his way back in. He'll have beads up in another 10 seconds, so he can reaggress. But how have you felt about these last few engagements from Adapting?
Well, the one beforehand where he hits 3 people, I'm down to let my Hobwa suicide for 3 people hit by the ultimate. That last one was way overextended for sure.
I thought it was just a good chance for free poke.
Yes, especially with Variety. I mean, you know he has ultimate, and even if he hits that ultimate, he doesn't kill him.
No.
And here's where Variety probably needs to sell the Crusher at this point, or maybe the Glad Shield. I think I'd sell Glad Shield from this position. You're already getting healing from my 2. You've still got your leap. You've got innate healing in the kit. Get some magical defense because you need to make adapting not be able to one-shot you. Instead, he goes the other way. He sells a Glad Shield, but this time it's for more damage in the form of Brawler's Beat Stick. This is so that he can dive Vote more effectively to make his lifesteal worse with this Brawler's Beat Stick anti-heal, and just make Vote have to use that ultimate more frequently in respecting his damage.
Is there any merit in maybe moving away from the Blackthorns as well, maybe in response to these double Soul Reavers that have come out from Adapting and Zyrhoes, or sometimes you see them dropped late game anyway?
Yeah, I think I keep it because I just don't have a lot of health in the build if I'm Variety from this position. You know what might be better as an HP item? Maybe a Shield of Regrowth would do me a little bit better. It's less health, but it's CDR, gives me a relevant passive, and it does make that Soul Reaver slightly worse while still giving me some modicum of HP. I don't think I'd mind that, but for, say, Qvofred,
stick with it.
I think he just needs the HP outright. Maybe you sell it for a Titan's Bane so that you can kill these tanks more effectively, because that's where these Fear No Evil's been going, is onto the frontliners, so I think a Titan's Bane might help him out a lot.
Well, I love how these late game changes show us the mindset. Variety thinking he hasn't done enough damage. Brawlers and Crusher there for him now. He really wants to make sure that he's hurting whoever he's on. Pittsburgh Knights have a small scuffle there with Dig, but no one ends up getting locked down. And we've crossed the 40-minute threshold. You weren't kidding with this one being a long one. And it's anyone's game. All that stuff Dig did so well in the early game, it's irrelevant now. I mean, one team fight, and this is the Knights game.
Yes, absolutely. And this is where Jormungandr is great, too. Look at the way that Zyrhoes is just dropping these pools all
It's so
across the
smart.
jungle. They slow you. They deal relevant damage to you. I mean,
And it's at the choke points. That's exactly where you want those. Yeah.
It's so obnoxious to deal with. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it, especially if you're, say, an AMC who's just floating around everywhere. There's nothing you can do to get around it. You just have to accept that that's happening to you. I wouldn't mind seeing a Gem of Isolation even for Zyrhoes to make that even more annoying. Sell your cooldown boots for him with that Elixir of Speed, of course, and end up slowing everyone that much more as they walk through those pools. It gives you that extra bit of control.
There's not a ton to get away from it, you know, not like the wing blades, only the one sprint there from Trixtank, and he'll have to be perfect about how he times those. So the slows could certainly punish as the Knights go for the Pyromancer. This does give them a chance to get back here to the fight sooner if they need to back, which can certainly be a nice thing, but nowhere near as big as the Fire Giant here. Dignitas aren't losing too much sleep.
Variety was able to successfully invade red buff for Pittsburgh Knights. That might cause them a bit more concern than even the Pyromancer will for Dignitas, because it's not only is Variety boosting his damage now, but it's taking it away from those on Pittsburgh Knights, and that's usually the bigger deal.
Trixtank isn't going to be able to find much here from EmilZy and Zyrhoes. The Ataraxia is pushed up. They've got full control of this space. So maybe trying to group up around this wave they have pushed up on the right-hand side. The Knights moved into a defensive position around the Tier 2. They don't want to give this one up. But now Variety and Qvofred have good flanking positions, so this should be a 1 Tier 2 tower on the right-hand side. And a nice one to grab right now. If they get the Fire Giant and have to push, it's so much easier. And now they catch out EmilZy. He's been crippled by the Stinger as well, and he has to leave.
That actual Magi's Cloak cleanse off the stuns end up helping EmilZy in the end, because that gets rid of the cripple that Hurriwind Stinger provided. But good bait and setup there. Actually forced out Thorns.
Yes.
Hurriwind uses Stinger, sure, but he's got a little bit of CDR in the build. And Stinger, while important, is not the most important ultimate for Dignitas. And if you can just get EmilZy that much easier to kill in the next engagement, then it's probably worth your time. I imagine that was Ataraxia with a stop time over the wall or something like that caught him, and that's the downside of Jormungandr, is that you're huge. You can see everything, but you're huge, and you get hit by everything because of that. And so Ataraxia can just throw out abilities pretty freely and end up forcing you to use your ultimates when you may not want to. 20% CDR for Zyrhoes. That's before a purple pot, which if he has it, that's 30%. He'll have that ultimate up soonish, but that's still a big one to end up losing.
Trixtank gets stunned out, and the Knights ready to re-engage yet again. What is it that you've seen that's kept these fights from being clean for one side or the other? Is it these frontliners? Like, are they having a hard time getting past Deathwalker? Or what's keeping these fights from being clean in one direction?
Well, Ataraxia has ended up really far forward a couple fights this game. And so when that starts happening to you as a carry, it starts making you a little bit more gun-shy about where you want to be in these engagements. I think Ataraxia could probably be in more aggressive spots occasionally, but because he's ended up dying to Adapting's burst and CC combos so often this game, he's ending up a little bit further back, which means that Deathwalker can play a little bit further forward, EmilZy can play a little bit further forward. And I don't think that's a mistake from Ataraxia. I just think that's a reality that he has to respect how much damage Adapting can provide on this Habwa. And Hurriwind can't be anywhere near the starting engagement because he's AMC still, no matter what. And on the other side for Pittsburgh Knights, it's about these tanks having to respect Fear No Evil from Qvofred, and that they have to really worry about peeling Variety off their backline. It's that really, frankly, both teams are doing their jobs really well about hitting who they need to be hitting, and that's forcing everyone to be a little bit nervous.
Well, that's a nice win for the Knights. They forced Trixtank and Draconic Corruption early. Crushing Wave comes through, but this time Hurriwind on time with the relics, and that keeps him alive. Now Adapting has committed quite far forward, but Zyrhoes comes in as the cavalry. It's just not in time. Variety cuts down the Habwa, and now they want to re-aggress. Deathwalker Fatal Strike forced out, and there's Fear No Evil. Pin him up against the wall, right into the stop time, and Hurriwind gets one more.
Beautiful patience from Qvofred. Adapting just gets really trigger happy there, and maybe this is Dignitas' grand plan. Let's just not use our relics enough times that Adapting will think, I'll just one-shot him, because he's not going to use his relics in time. That time Hurriwind quick enough on the Aegis, and all of a sudden Pittsburgh Knights have a horrible fight that they have to take because Adapting is way too far forward. Where was EmilZy in that engagement is my big question. I said as soon as I saw this draft, this is a dive comp. You want to use that Yormalt, use that Circuit mobility, use the blinks to get on top of these carries, and Adapting does his part. Zyrhoes doesn't come in, he uses his to disengage, and EmilZy still has ultimate and blink, nowhere to be found in that fight.
Mid-Phoenix being chunked now, and only 3 members of Pittsburgh Knights here. So it'll be a very tall task trying to slow down this surge. And I think Dignitas smell a little bit of blood in the water. They're moving right into the Titan room. They have it below half HP, and there's nothing that the Knights can do. Dignitas, 46 minutes on the clock, grab game 1.
And all they were waiting for was that one mistake, and usually Adapting's the one who's so patient and so... he really wants to come in late in these team fights, and Qvofred really took a page out of his book in that last fight, where Adapting overcommits, goes in far too deep, But again, I think that Adapting had the right idea. Yes, he probably doesn't find the right ultimate there in that situation. He only hit one, and it was Aegis out pretty easily by Hurriwind. But you've got the Yorm to dive in with you. You've got a Serket that can use their mobility and get in there with you. He's dying in that fight. Adapting's got no, disillusions that he's surviving once he engages that way, but it's about winning the fight for your team anyways. And I think that there was still a possibility for that with the way Adapting played. I think that honestly, EmilZy needed to get in there. I mean, with Blink and Ultimate and Thorn still up in that fight, you've got to find a way to make an impact.
And it really was, it just felt like to me that they weren't able to get to the backline convincingly enough. Adapting was, I don't know, man, maybe frustrated almost by not being able to get in there with that Hobwa enough because he really was pulling the trigger quick. And it felt like even a little bit ahead of the rest of his team. Obviously, it's impossible to know. I'm not in the comms with them or anything, but just from my read of it, we don't normally see him play that way. In fact, in Season 6, he's been almost too patient from what I've seen, and he will really, really wait and come at the back end, so that's a lot different than what we're used to.
I agree. I think that was just when you stare across the way at your opponent long enough, someone's got to twitch towards the gun, right? And Adapting just pulled the trigger a bit early.
And good job from Hurriwind finally being able to get that one out. So that means Game 1 goes to Dignitas, but if the rest of the set is like that, then we got some good games coming our way. Let's get it back over to the desk.
Thanks a lot, boys. Great cast on that one. Tom and Taco here, breaking game number 1 down. And looking at this one, I mean, this was real back and forth. We expected, I think, to see kind of a longer drawn-out game, but it was all explosive.
I think that, obviously that last team fight kind of sealed the deal there for Dignitas. I thought they were going to get the enhanced Fire Giant at best, but the fact that they were able to just continue barreling down the mid lane, and it really did all just boil down to Hurriwind finally being able to find that reflexive response time towards the Hobwa. It's not an easy thing to do either. I mean, on land especially where you have like 0 ping factors coming into play, it can definitely be tough trying to read out when Adapting is going to be looking for that Blink ultimate, but the Aegis just saves the day.
Yeah, fantastic job there. As you heard the commentators say, Adapting looked a little frustrated. 4, 6, and 4. Very over-aggressive play, I agree. The Hobwa jungle is something very interesting. Adapting plays it very differently than other folks. He kind of doesn't play it in the jungle, and the gank early game is actually surprising and very non-traditional to what we're used to seeing out of him. He plays for these, just find me in 15 minutes. It'll be a Hebo. It doesn't matter where you put me on the map. But the problem is that sometimes, or at least with this game, he was already behind at that point, and that kind of stopped him from profiting.
Something else that I really wasn't too crazy about, though, I know that Adapting had his fair share of struggles throughout that match, but I definitely don't think that Zyrhoes was able to do much of anything with the Jormungandr in the mid lane. I like the idea behind it, and I do think that there were a couple of instances where Zyrhoes was able to utilize that giant ultimate to kind of spread out Dignitas, and those led into some promising team fights for Pittsburgh Knights, but overall, having one good engagement, I think, throughout the course of 40-something plus minutes is a little bit too low in my mind. I think that Pittsburgh Knights might be a little bit better off just looking to prioritize Adapting and Zyrhoes' picks in their first 3 of the drafting phase. I definitely felt like they were kind of just struggling towards the bottoms and deciding what they wanted to take into Dignitas. And led it early on. I mean, you knew that they wanted the AMC Chronos and Fafnir, whether it was going to be AMC in mid or ADC or vice versa. That was unable to really be decided until the match actually began. But I definitely don't think that they did Adapting any favors by the time it got to the 4th fifth, because if Adapting's flexing into Hobwa, I'm sure that that's something that the team is trusted.
Yeah, we've seen it a couple
him
of
with,
times.
and we have seen it a couple of times, but it just felt weird.
I agree. Looking at it, first of all, you said I definitely agree that I would like to see Zyrhoes and Adapting kind of prioritized in the beginning of half of the draft. And at the end of the day, I mean, Hebo in the jungle is mad strong. Taco and I, we were talking off camera. I think that Hebo is one of the stronger junglers right now, but everything in its own little box, right? Meta is only strong as the player playing therein. And I think that while Hebo might be stronger than some of the other characters in the jungle, I think Adapting is better with those other characters. So at the end of the day, I just don't really like to see Adapting on the Hebo jungle anymore. What I will say, though, counteracting your mid, I haven't seen anything up or down. We didn't get anything
I
out
think
of
that's
it.
a problem within itself, though.
Yeah.
In my mind, because Zyrhoes is such a phenomenal player. I mean, let the guy run wild with
That's fair.
something that he can either play aggressively, maybe even looking towards gods like Agni, for example. And I do still firmly believe that Agni has been severely underplayed in Pro League.
Range stun, kind of good.